Well, today marks Freedom Day, which, as we know, commemorates the date when all South Africans could vote in the first democratic elections in 1994. But the Foundation for Human Rights says many people today still have nothing to celebrate, given the persistent socio-economic problems, corruption and discrimination that still exists. So let's unpack the story. We're joined now by the Foundation's Sarah Mota via our video link. Sarah, it's great to have you with us on the program. And I think this is a topic that we do cover every Freedom Day. How far have we come? What does freedom mean to various communities? How much do we actually have to celebrate? Does it feel to you this year that the answer to that is all the more disheartening?
Well, there's less to celebrate for many people. I mean, if you look into the way people responded to the polls, recent polls or the latest polls, it tells us as South Africa that our people feel disgruntled and hopeless about our democracy. And the sad part of it is that when this day was decided upon, the country was almost at the brink of a civil war when they had murdered Chris Hani on the 10th of April. This is the same month when it was decided that we need to set this day for voting for South Africans so that we can usher all of them to an era where they will enjoy the freedoms they've been talking about. Yes, that freedom of voting and be recognized as a human being, irrespective of your color, was realized. But now the socio-economic conditions, as they manifest on the ground, they give less hope to the majority in South Africa.
Today, we are the most unequal society in South Africa. More than half of our young people are unemployed. Our expanded unemployment rate is well over 40% in the country. So when we talk freedom, the economics, the socio-economics of that is incredibly lacking.
The socio-economic conditions are dire. I mean, it depends who's counting. You're mentioning 50%. We're talking here 70% of young people who are unemployed. I was in Katlehong on the 19th of April talking to young people. All of them, you know, those that were in the room were unemployed, and they were asking themselves as to what does this education that they've gone through for the past 12 years, even at 3 more years or 4 more years post, matric education, what does it mean to them if they cannot grow and their own food and feed themselves, still depending on someone out there to create an opportunity for them to earn income so that they can buy food. So it's definitely the situation. I mean, corruption is one of the issues that has taken a lot from the mouth of the young people in South Africa. We're talking of 1.3 trillion rands coming out of the Zondo Commission report, money that has been lost through corruption. We're still fumbling as to how much resources can that bring to young people. We know the KPMG report, which I've spoken about it eloquently in the past, tells us that the 28 to 42 billion rands that we're losing just through gender-based violence in South Africa can give all of our young people opportunities to do something, let alone that it can build 500,000 houses for people who do not have homes. But also it can additionally provide children's grants for about 7 years. I'm talking about a budget for just a year that we spend on gender-based violence.
Yeah. I mean, we say these numbers, Sarah, 50%, 70%, and they are shocking. And you've just described what that translates to in terms of the lives of young people, for one, their everyday lives. But what about when we talk about their psyche, Sarah? What does that do to a young person in our country? We talk so much about Freedom Day, about democracy, about how far we've come since apartheid. But what does that kind of number, 70% of young people, what does that do to their psyche?
We have seen an increase in mental health status of young people, an increase of young people committing suicide due to the desperation of being locked within their own households for more than 10 years without, job opportunities. I mean, a recent study on young people seeking work culminates to a fact that at least they spend about 540 rands a month going from, one internet cafe to the next, or going to a job interview, which will not happen in their lifetimes. And therefore, mental health and well-being of young people has been affected tremendously, that, they then fall into what we call negative pathological behavior, such as alcohol abuse, drug abuse, and of course the violence, because the violence mentally, it's something that we cannot measure. It's easy to bandage physical wounds that we can see, but the psychological wounds, they then translate into, emotional layers of psychological wounds, which are not easy to deal with, and they become transferred to the next generation. You talk of young people who have not seen in their lifetime anyone working. There are 3 generations. Remember, the 76 generation was saying freedom first, then education later. And those people today, they are grandmothers and grandfathers, and they have given birth to children and grandchildren who in this lifetime, the freedoms that we have today are not translating into real meals or tables in the, food in their table. Yeah. Just before COVID, I was in Isaac Morrison's in Soweto with Ward 4. One of their community leaders confirmed that the ward is economically stressed by 2 issues. 97% are economically stressed by 2 issues. One is poverty, no food on the table. In fact, some families are skipping meals, just ensuring that the children are eating. Only 3 meals per week. That tells us that, no, the situation is very dire. 97% of communities not having anything to eat, and secondly, crime caused by those that need something to eat and then take from others.
And I mean, Sarah, everything you're just telling us is just a snapshot, isn't it, of a problem and a scourge that is much wider and much deeper. We're just scratching the surface in the conversation we're having now. President Cyril Ramaphosa is in Middelburg today in Mpumalanga. He'll be giving his Freedom Day address there. And I wonder, as the Foundation for Human Rights, what can he say at a time like this as the president?
What we're trying to do at the foundation is to anchor the narrative of, active citizenry. We just also came back from Eastern Cape, where we were, exposing the assets that exist in communities. So now it's no more messaging that are so, intellectual. We need practical action. Yeah. So what we're doing in the Eastern Cape, we're anchoring the communities with knowledge to realize the assets, such as the available space in front of their, yards, or even in what they have now as flower pots to grow food, to understand that, to have food on your table is not something that is far-fetched from you. It's something that you can start growing from the seeds of the, vegetables that you are eating daily. You can take them and then put them back on the ground and then, eat something, in the next few months. It's something that we see it as very difficult, but to those that are doing it, it's something very easy, and it can be done in our lifetime, not even in a year, but within 3 months. We know that is possible. And we're looking into a situation where climate change is a reality. We don't need to talk about it. We need to adapt mitigation strategies, such as those low-impact lifestyles, the lifestyle where people know, for example, that certain plants such as vetiver grass, they can prevent soil erosion. Even when it's flooding, they can hold on to the to the barrier of the earth. The information is out there. It's just how we translate it into simple tools that people can use to empower themselves, largely at the level of your table in front of you, because you cannot owe the stomach. Yes, you can have not other items, but the food and water is a basic necessity, and people need to know that practical information from the education that they get from schools. We ask ourselves, how come can people go up to grade 12 and still after that go hungry and not have the necessary skills to grow their own food, to understand that the economy as it is will not absorb all of the people that are out there in the country, but they need the agency to be active to produce for themselves.
Yeah, practical steps is what we need. Sarah Mota, let me thank you for your time this morning on the AIM Report, Vulnerable Groups Manager at the Foundation for Human Rights, as we reflect on the steps that the country needs to take on this Freedom Day to deal with the challenges that we still face.